This happened when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I lived in a fairly quiet suburban town in Australia. Crime rate was almost non-existent, so my parents were pretty laid back about letting their kids play in the streets without supervision from time to time. Well, this was great for us, the kids. For other more sinister people, this was something that could easily be taken advantage of. One weekend, I convinced my parents to let me go home after school with a friend to stay over one Friday night. I regularly went to this person's house, and I knew their parents quite well. Since they trusted me, it wasn't a problem letting us both play with other kids on the street past 9 p.m. My friend's house was located at the back of a cul-de-sac or dead-end street. The kids from the neighboring houses would regularly congregate at the end of the street at night to hang out, so tonight we decided to join them. It was a usual thing we did when I was over. That night, since it was a weekend, there were a lot of us, maybe 6 or 7, and we decided to play 44 home, which is pretty much a game of tips with the end goal of getting to a designated area before you are tipped in order to be safe for that round. Well, shortly before starting the game, we all decided on where the safe zone should be. So as we started looking around for a suitable spot, my friend nudged me and told me to look down the end of the street. He had a puzzled look on his face, like he was seeing something unfamiliar. He asked me if I thought that tree at the end of the street kinda looked like a person. There was a substantial patch of bushland at the area where he was pointing to, so it took me a while, but I eventually saw the tree stump he was pointing at. And yeah, he was right, it did faintly look like the silhouette of a person, but nothing to be alarmed about. It did look a lot more like a tree stump than a person, so we continued playing our game. We were playing the game for about 20 minutes before some of the girls from the group complained that they were tired and wanted to sit down for a while, so we decided to have a break. As we were sitting on someone's lawn, I looked over at the stump. Weird. It looked a little bigger than before. With my bewildered look, the group asked me what I was looking at. Me and my friend both pointed out the stump and asked if anyone thought that it looked like a person. The girls in the group immediately thought we were trying to scare them. They were about a year or so younger than us, so they were scared easily. This led to a jumbled debate on whether the stump was a person or not. The majority had their doubts, and one of the boys said that they would walk up to the stump to prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a stump. Like a herd of penguins, we shuffled about 20 or so meters behind him as he approached the stump. When he got about 2/3 down the street, the boy ahead of us froze. One of the girls yelled out asking why he had stopped. Silence. The kid then took one very slow step back. It was at that moment we turned our attention to the stump. My heart skipped a beat when I clearly saw the stump take a step towards us. From out of the trees, it was clearly not a tree stump. It was a man. No wonder we couldn't see him. He was wearing a black coat, black pants, and black shoes. We all froze in complete and utter fear. My heart was racing. It felt like a scene from a horror movie. He took another step closer and we could see the outline of his face from the street light. His blank expression turned into a sinister smile, like he was about to pull off a heist. Finally, the boy in front of us kicked into gear and yelled for everyone to run. Startled, we did the same. Understandably, we were all screaming for our lives. The girls' screams could have shattered windows, and it made almost everyone come out of their houses. Luckily, once we were halfway up the street, a father of one of the kids came out to tell us we were being too loud. We swarmed to him, huffing and puffing, trying to form a coherent sentence on what had just transpired. We looked for the man chasing us, but he was nowhere to be seen. Not a single indicator that he had even existed. Once we finally got the story out, we were all told to go back to our homes and go to bed. Whenever we tried bringing up the story, we were just shrugged off and told it was probably just someone walking their dog or some other excuse. I suppose since we were so young and highly factored into our credibility, and yes, blah blah kids have imaginations. But in all honesty, I know what I saw, and it was completely compatible with everyone else's stories. The group stopped hanging out after that. So, crazy guy that looked like a tree? Let's not meet again. So my parents, my boyfriend, and I live on a corner lot in a subdivision across from a senior home. And this is the kind of senior home with no nurses, just an apartment for people over the age of 60. There has been this lady who lives in the home who we have seen for the last year. She's about 5'5", extremely hunched over, has dyed shoulder-length hair that is always stringy and greasy and covers her face, and she walks constantly all over town. So a little backstory. We first came into contact with her while my parents were unloading groceries and she was walking around and asked for a drink. It was hot out, so my mom went inside and got her a cold Coke. A couple of days later, we found 2 new Cokes sitting on our step, which we thought was nice of her. She tends to yell nonsense and laughs really maniacally while walking up the street, so we knew she had some issues, but being from a family who works in the mental health field, we were nicer to her than most. We had a couple of other creepy encounters over several weeks. They were creepy, but this story is already too long. Skip a few weeks, I'm outside chatting with construction workers who are ripping up our front lawn. We watch her walk to the house across the street and try to get into their house using the front door. The woman who lives there is home, comes to the front door and opens it a crack to see who is trying to get in her house, and then promptly slams the door in the woman's face. Who knows what was said? So, she strolls over to us and starts complaining about the construction, asks for a drink and a smoke. I had just given the workers cold water and had smokes in my hands, so I didn't want to be a dick, and I gave her both. She asked my name, and since she already knew where I lived, I didn't think anything of it, and told her. I then cut my conversation short and went inside. Now, let me say, this woman is unpredictable. She can be heard in the neighborhood screaming and swearing, and cops have shown up several times. We're not the only ones who have had an unsettling run-in with her. Fast forward 2 weeks, it's Sunday, and my family and I had spent the day shopping in small towns and get home to order some food and watch some TV. It's 8 o'clock here and completely dark outside. Suddenly there is a knock. My mom and I make eye contact because we know exactly who this is, and we run into the kitchen where my dad was cleaning up. We are all whispering even though the TV is on and the blinds are open, so let's be real, it couldn't be more obvious that we're home. So my boyfriend has leaped into the huge lazy boy chair so that he can't be seen from the bay window, and my parents and I are huddled in the kitchen waiting for her to leave. It's quiet, so we sneak into the pitch black dining room to look out the other bay window when there's another 3 knocks. We wait. Then we hear talking. I sneak up to our heavy metal door to make sure it was locked, and as I do, she starts banging on it. I throw my back against the door and hold my breath, hoping she can't see me through the windows on each side of the door. This is when I can hear her talking. Like, she has her face right up to the crack in the door beside my head, and as I stand there, she begins to say, "Please, please, let me in, help me, temperamental element, please, let me in, help me, I'm afraid, temperamental element, help me, help me." While she is saying these things, she is violently shaking the door handle under my right arm and really trying to get in. She is saying it in this really terrified, wailing, moaning voice while crying, and for a second, I thought maybe she was really in danger. Until, bang, bang, bang! The whole door is shaking with me against it, and all of a sudden there's a man speaking, a deep, guttural voice, and he is vulgar and terrifying, saying things like, "You better open this door or I am going to kill you. I will fucking kill you. I know you're there," etc. Then back to her calling out for me to help her. The banging stops and the speaking continues, but I can tell it isn't right into the door, and she isn't trying the door handle anymore. My mom has called 911 at this point, so I run into the dining room where my dad is and look out the window to see her sitting in a chair on our porch having a heated conversation with thin air. Eventually, she leaves and walks back across the street, and we find 2 dimes sitting on the arm of the chair, presumably for the smoke she wanted to buy off me. It's been about 4 months, we've seen her here and there, but she hasn't come back to the house. Hopefully, she's gotten some help for her mental issues. For a little bit of context, I was a 14-year-old when this happened. It was a Saturday night. My aunt, mother, and me were in our backyard pool. It was about 9:30 or so at night, so we were just enjoying the warm weather and clear sky, when suddenly my little dog started growling towards our front door, which is a bit far from where we were. But the way my house was built provided an echo so that no matter where we were, my parents could hear me and my siblings could come to our aid if needed. This, though, wasn't the type of growl she gave to people walking down the streets. No, this was a downright angry growl, the one she gave whenever she sensed something or someone was near the door and not leaving. We shrugged it off, thinking it was another animal or something of the sort. Later, around 11 o'clock at night, we had gotten out of the pool and were just talking and joking around on the sofa that's near our door when we heard banging on our metal fence. We have a fence, then a wooden door not too far that opens to the house. Naturally, we were freaked out, being 3 females alone on a house without any sort of weapon close at hand to defend ourselves. It stopped, and soon after we called it a night and went to bed. Me, not feeling sleepy at all, stayed up watching movies. About an hour and a half into my movie marathon, I heard it again, the banging noise. This time, though, it was followed by a pair of footsteps heading to the window. I was freaked out. I knew it would be hard to remove the bars from them, but I was not taking any chances. Instead, I ran up the stairs carrying my now angry and barking dog to my mom's room. I locked the door and told both my mom and aunt what was happening. In an instant, they called the police, and as soon as sirens were heard in the distance, the banging stopped. We told the police what happened, and they patrolled the area for a while, but they saw no one. This person, whoever it was never caught, and it still terrifies me when being home alone. What my mom failed to mention to me at that point, but later on told me, was that the police, while searching the street in our home, found a knife and some rope near the window. I have never been more terrified in my life. This story did not happen to me, but to a friend of mine. My friend Judy had just turned 18 and was literally in the very first day of her college classes. I'll add that, although she is smart, she is a very trusting and gullible person. There was another student, Sam, sitting next to her, who just so happened to have lost his textbook before the semester ever started. He asked her if she could share with him for the day, and she didn't take issue with it. Over the next few days, they continued sharing the textbook during class. She didn't mind. He was a very smart, handsome, and charming person. She worked at Starbucks in a mall, and what a coincidence, one day he showed up there too. For some odd reason, they kept running into each other. After that, they seemed to be together all the time. They get together after class to study and have drinks. They continued sharing the textbook during class. So, sometime through the semester, it was found out that Sam wasn't a student of the class, nor was he even enrolled in the university. I'm not sure on the details of how he got caught or how he managed to get away with it for so long. When she pressed him for information, he admitted that he went to that class because he had seen her and followed her. Sam confessed that he did all that just to get to know her. This did not raise any red flags for her. As I said, she was naive and gullible, and he was very charming. She was quite flattered, actually, that he would go through such lengths to get to know her. Judy didn't live on campus. Rather, she lived with her sister and brother-in-law because they were close by the university. They had somewhat strict rules as to who she could have over to the house because they had 2 small children. Sam had started coming over a lot and was starting to make himself a little too much at home. Her brother-in-law did not like this one bit, and when her sister found out how she met Sam, they felt uneasy and warned her that it wasn't normal behavior. Nevertheless, they relented as she seemed to be close to Sam. I don't know what triggered it, but one day her brother-in-law had enough and asked why she didn't respect his house rules and invited a complete stranger in who had practically taken over the home. She let it out that she had never invited him or even given him her address. He said he was coming over one day and showed up. That was the last straw. They told her to never see him again and called her parents to get them involved. Her brother-in-law kicked Sam out and threatened him not to come back or see Judy again, with some choice words. I'm not sure if he ever tried to see her again, but she's met and has been dating new people since then, so I think he's completely out of her life now. So, yeah. I don't care if you lost your book. Let's not meet. This is something that happened to me quite a few years ago when I was 20 years old and finishing up my third year of university. Even writing it out years later, I feel sick. It was during the final exams of my spring semester when I found myself restless at the library. Up until the point, I lived in the library. I am easily distracted when I study at home, so throughout university I was keen to shut myself up in the library as my program, pre-med, was very demanding. As I mentioned before, I found myself restless at the library and decided to take up a friend's offer to study at her place. June was a great studying companion as a classmate in my program, but most importantly, a fellow smoker. I packed up my things and headed out. I live in a large city in Canada. We have public transit which I use to take to school and this evening to June's. We studied late into the night. I left around 1 a.m. heading home so that I could make the last bus to where I lived on the East End. I hopped onto the subway, got to my stop, went to the bus transfer area, and looked at the schedule to see in how long I would be home. When I looked at the schedule, I saw that I had missed the last bus by several minutes. The feeling I experienced at reading this is something I'm sure many of you have experienced yourselves. That sick to your stomach, something is off, stomach drop, gave me a terrible premonition that something was going to happen. I evaluated my options. The walk home was not far, only 10 to 15 minutes depending on my pace. I could have also called a cab and waited with the man in the booth at the subway, as it was 3:30 at this point, and the subway was still open. However, I decided I should walk, as it was final exams and I wanted to save money. Up until this point, I was bleeding cash with the amount of coffee I bought on campus alone, let alone cigarettes, food, etc. I began my brisk walk into the night. I was able to calm myself down as I was walking. I had taken this route many times by foot, and I often enjoyed walking all through my city during the day. I also lived on the border of the village, which was almost guaranteed to be populated on an otherwise normal Tuesday night. As I walked past the village, I felt on edge once again. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was listening to my music and looking ahead as I see a white utility van drive down the street towards me. My stomach dropped again, but this time more intensely. I knew what was going to happen because I had seen it many times on the television and in movies. Instinctively, I prepared myself. I pulled my headphones off my head and onto my neck so that I could be more aware of my surroundings, and held onto my backpack more tightly by the straps going under my arms in preparation to run. After this, I could only think of one thing: the 24-hour grocery store that was ahead of me around a small bend in the road. I quickened my pace to reach my destination. About 100 feet in front of me, the car begins to slow down, slowing down progressively as it approaches my location. As the car drives past me, a man in his 50s or 60s looks me right in the face and stares me down. But much to my surprise, he continues onward. This gave me a small sense of relief, but I knew not to let my guard down. I wasn't out of this yet, and kept tracking the car out of the corner of my eye. I can't exactly explain it, but I felt completely aware to the behavior of the car without having my eyes directly on it. It was as if I could feel its movement. Something in me told me that the car had halted. and I turned around to see that it had indeed pulled over to the side of the road. As I looked back, I saw the man staring at me through his rearview mirror through the back window of the van. This sent me into a panic I had never before experienced and have not experienced since. I took off running down the street, thinking only of the store where I believed I would be safe. But, like in any other TV thriller, the car pulled a U-turn and pursued me. I ran, the car sped after me, and then I got lucky. The car had reached me just as I had arrived at the doors of the grocery store. My heart was racing and I felt relief, but I was now aware of the fact that I was not yet home. Who was working inside? Will they help me? Should I call the cops? How will I get home safely? Will I get home safely? But again, as fate would have it, I got lucky again. Walking into the grocery store, a man I recognized was walking out. He was an elderly man in his 70s who lived in my building. I ran to him and pleaded, "Please, sir, you may not know who I am, but I know you. I recognize you from my building. A man is chasing me in his car and I'm scared for my life. Please, sir, can you please walk me home? I'm so scared." The man agreed to walk me home, the angel that he is. He and I had spoken before about the university I went to. He was a retired professor from the institution I myself attended and often spent his days reading in the libraries. I could tell they didn't recognize me, but recognized the seriousness of the situation and agreed to walk me home. On the verge of tears, we talked about small things. What he was doing up so late, how he had been reading but fell asleep and decided to get some groceries to cook. Small conversation to calm me down. I think of the whole situation, one of the most terrifying things that happened was on this walk home with my angel. The car repeatedly circled back to where we were walking, presumably to see if I was again alone. I was terrified that he would see in which condo I lived in would continue to pursue me in the future. On the third time, he drove off down the street and didn't come back. We reached the secured lobby of our building, and I thanked the man again for his help. I don't even know his name. A few minutes later, I was safe in the comfort of my own apartment with the lock locked and the deadbolt bolted. I called my brother to cry about what happened while obsessively looking at the street 19 floors below for the car that pursued me. I never saw it again. I realized how stupid it was of me to walk alone at night. I have never done this since. My life is not worth a $10 cab fare. I don't know what the intentions of the man who pursued me were, but they were not noble. I am incredibly lucky to be alive today. After the incident, I decided to move out of the neighborhood. Too many bad memories of this night. Before I did, I saw the man who saved me a few more times, but when I said hello, I could tell he had no idea who I was. I think he has some kind of dementia or cognitive impairment that made him not remember me, which honestly makes me sad. I don't think he will ever know or remember how much him walking with me meant. So, to the man who chased me down during finals exams almost 4 years ago, let's not meet. As always, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, this is Creepy Reviews saying,
Hasta luego.